As I'm recording this video, Squad Busters is dead. Well, not really. They closed the beta. It was only available for 10 days, and we knew that that was what was going to happen. If you don't know what Squad Busters is, it is Supercell's most recent game, but they only released it for 10 days during a closed beta, so only a handful of people could actually play it. In fact, not everybody could actually play it, even from the specific location they had. They handpicked people to be able to play it. I think their goal was to get some actual feedback from players, and probably to get a good direction of where they want to take the game next. And this video is kind of a weird one, because it's a 100% honest review of a game that wasn't even finished yet and isn't even playable anymore. And most people watching this probably didn't even get a chance to play in the first place. Honestly though, I'm actually really hyped about making this video because I think that the game team is really onto something amazing, and I love Supercell and I love the games that they make, so of course I'm going to talk about it. So this video is just about providing feedback that will hopefully help the future of the game in some sort of a positive way. Also, a big reason why I'm doing this is because I just think that game development is really fascinating, and I think it's really cool that Supercell invited some people to play that get their game so early in its development. Now, what I am not going to do is sugarcoat my feedback. As much as I want to say that Squad Busters was amazing and that they should launch globally right now, that's just not the case. If you guys know very much about Supercell, you already know that Supercell's goal for every single game is actually kind of insane, okay? Their goal is to make games that as many people as possible will play for years and that they will remember forever. That mission statement is just insane. It's not like, hey, we want to release games and make money. No, that's not what their goal is. They want to like achieve amazing games that everybody remembers. And the truth is that Squad Busters has some core issues to it that I think need to be addressed if they're ever going to reach that goal. But before we get to those core issues, I want to talk about the core thing that I think they got right. I think the biggest thing that they got right is really capturing the magic of bringing all the characters from all Supercell games into this one kind of party experience. This is a core aspect of this game that I feel like that could be really huge. It gives players from all of their games a reason to try out the new game and see if it's for them, and each character has some sort of a special ability that matches their characters from the game that they came from. Shelly fires a super that deals splash damage and can be used to burst enemies down. Nita summons a bear. El Primo can body slam on enemies, and then you have Greg, who is from Heyday and can chop trees down. Or much cooler than Greg is the witch that can summon skeletons to fight for her. Like, it's really, really cool. And as somebody who's a longtime fan of Supercell games, I honestly, like, I gave me chills when I first played it for the first time. It felt a little bit like magic, right? Getting to be able to play the game for the first hour or so was really cool because there were characters that I had already fallen in love with and that I knew I wanted to unlock, and learning what their abilities were in this game was really exciting. Plus, there's something magical about being on the main menu and seeing all of the characters walk around. Like, it's really cool. Like the barbarian interacting with Nita, come on. But there are 3 core issues that I do think are major issues that will prevent a global release if they are not addressed. And the first core issue is how little choice we have as far as squad building goes. At its core, Squad Busters is essentially a live deck building game or a squad building game. As you're fighting enemies or monsters, you get gold, which you can use to then unlock different characters and add them into your squad. You're given a choice of 3, and that is all. And from what I can tell, it's essentially random. It seems like the common heroes are a little bit more common. They appear more frequently. The epic heroes are the least common, but other than that, it seems 100% completely random. And because of that, you're actually given very little choice each match. One of the first things that I wanted to do when I downloaded the game is create a squad all of brawlers. Well, you can't do that unless all brawlers happen to pop up. Well, how about a squad all of DPS characters? You can't do that either unless you're lucky. Okay, what about a squad that's full of utility that just runs around and focuses on gathering resources? Once again, you cannot do that unless you're really lucky. You can't do a squad of all chickens. You can't do a squad of all Nitas. You can't build the squad that you want to because you're at the mercy of the randomness in the chests. Now, there is a reroll option that you can use once every chest, but in order for you to buy those reroll dice, you have to spend gems, which are very limited for free-to-play players, and honestly, I think is a terrible monetization mechanic. I am fine with some pay-to-win aspects as far as upgrading your heroes outside of battle, but pay-to-win mechanics like rerolls should 100% not be allowed in individual matches, especially when it's tied to something so random and RNG based. It feels like gambling, because what if you spend those gems and then it rerolls and you get one of the same characters that you had in the previous run, or you don't get the character that you wanted? It's not good. I don't like it. I really don't like it. In fact, I dislike it very passionately. But even if we just ignore the pay to win feature of paying gems for rerolling, by the way, nobody could actually spend gems on the 10-day beta. So like, that's not even really fair to say at the moment, but my hope is that they address it in the future. But if we ignore the pay to win feature, even rerolls will not guarantee that you will unlock the specific hero that you're looking for. And in my opinion, the complete randomness of the chests is holding the game back from being something truly amazing. I want to make videos about making an all brawler squad in the game, or seeing if I can win somehow by only picking chickens, but I can't create that content because you can't really do that. And so there's not actually a ton of fun content for me to make for the game, and I actually see that as a big issue, okay? Supercell's goal is to create games that as many people will play as possible, and in order for them to do that, they have to create a game that is good for content creation. And at the moment, it's just not there yet, okay? But let's step back from being a content creator. One of my favorite aspects of Clash Royale, or even Brawl Stars, even Clash Mini, is that I can choose the deck or the team comp that I get to play before I jump into battle. That is a lot of fun. Now, Squad Busters is very different because you build your squad as you go and you need to adapt to your environment. And honestly, I love that. I think that's really fantastic. But I think that the game needs a lot more choice by the players so that we can build the squads the way that we want to, and so that we can look at an enemy team and say, oh, I know what I could use to actually counter that team. Let me go to a chest and then somehow pick that. So there's a lot more depth and strategy that goes into the game when it comes to how you build your squads. I do actually have some solutions to this first core issue. One option is to give players 2 free rerolls for every chest that they open, and guarantee that if a character had actually already popped up and you reroll it, that character will not pop up again. This is still pretty random, and you still can't choose your squad exactly how you would like, but it's a very simple improvement over what we've got right now, and it gives you 9 options per chest instead of 2 options per chest. Obviously, this should be a free reroll. It should be just built into the game so you can go up to the chest and choose to reroll or not. Another option that I really like is the ability to upgrade a squad member in your current squad instead of unlocking a new squad member when you have enough gold to open up a chest. So that way you can choose to either have duplicates so that you'd have a squad full of chickens the entire time, or maybe they could go a different route of just upgrading your chickens so that once you have enough gold to actually open up a chest, rather than going to a chest to unlocking a new character, you just like hit upgrade on your chicken or something like that, and then your chicken gets stronger or faster or something. I don't know. Honestly, I would like both of these options to be added to the game since they're more simple, they give us a lot more choice, and honestly, I think that choice would be more fun. It would add a lot more to the strategic depth of the actual game. I also think there are some other improvements that they could make to actual squad building to make it more interesting and higher skill cap. Currently, if you go up to a chest, you have to decide your next squad member as fast as you possibly can, for a few reasons. First of all, your current squad will actually freeze. They won't attack enemies while you are selecting it, even if they are being attacked. So if you go up to a chest and you're trying to choose what you want, you feel really, really rushed. That decision, there's very little time that you can actually think about it, because guess what? Your squad's being attacked by some sort of monster, or even worse, possibly an enemy team, and you can't do anything. You can't let your characters farm monsters. You can't start moving around to gain ground or even run away from enemies. And honestly, that's actually pretty frustrating as a player. A huge quality of life improvement would be for the menu to pop up and allow you to continue moving your characters or your squad around while you made your selection. And on top of that, they could make it so that your squad will actually attack back to anybody within their circle or something like that. It's a really small thing they could do to make the gameplay feel a little bit more smooth, give players a little bit more time, and not feel quite as rushed. Okay, that was the first core issue with the game that I think needs to be addressed, specifically the lack of choice in building your squad. There's not very much strategy when it comes to actually building your squad because it's so RNG based. The second core issue is also a lack of strategic depth, more so with the skill-based decisions that you can make as far as player versus player interactions go. In other words, PvP is incredibly flat and lacking depth. Here's basically how the combat works in Squad Busters. If you stop moving, then your squad will attack anything close to them. And that's it. That's how it works. You can kind of choose which enemies they'll attack by being closer to others. And you can also use abilities like Rage and Freeze that do actually impact fights, but it is pretty simple. The most complex strategy that I could think of the entire time playing it for 10 days is to charge up a super ability like Shelly's or El Primo's or Colt's off of little monsters, and then wait to engage with anything else until you see another enemy so that they actually start start off that fight with their supers. That seems to be like the best strategy, but you couldn't even choose when to fire their abilities, at least not very well. Once their super abilities were charged, they would release their super abilities with their next auto attack. No matter what, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. It just would happen. So a lot of the time, Shelly might be ready to use her super, but El Primo wouldn't be. And by the time that El Primo was ready to use his super, Shelly would have already used hers because that's how things worked. And honestly, it was really frustrating because like at times I felt like I both couldn't do anything to take enemies out and couldn't do anything to fight against people who were fighting me. The best strategy the vast majority of the time was to just run away. And honestly, I really wanted to give the whole auto combat thing a try because it makes the game very easy to enter into, and for new people that aren't really hardcore gamers like me or most of you guys watching this video, a chance to actually compete against the more hardcore players like us. Because guess what? Squad Busters is not really a hardcore game. It didn't feel like it, at least, which I'll talk about why that's an issue later on. But at the end of the day, whenever you would fight against somebody else, you're just sitting there watching two squads fight each other and crossing your fingers that your squad would win. And when you first pick up on the game, I felt like it was kind of interesting, but the lack of skill-based decisions mid-fight led to it being pretty boring after a while. In fact, not even after a while. After a couple of hours of playing the game, it was pretty boring. And that's not interest. That's not good for the game, because guess what? Supercell's goal is to make games that people will play for years. If I'm bored after 2 hours, that's not good. Like I said, it was usually more rewarding to just not pick fights with enemies at all because there's very little that you could do to outskill them. Like if you see somebody that has more squad members on them or they're more DPS characters, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna run away and just run around and just not let them catch me. I'll just grab a chicken and run. That's literally what it came down to, and it was not fun. And honestly, player versus player interaction should be the most exciting aspect of the entire game. People love that stuff, right? That's what they should be focusing on, and those player versus player interactions need to have more depth for this game to go global. Also, like I was saying earlier, Supercell has incredibly skill-based games. Clash of Clans, at least at the highest level, is so complex, I can't even follow along pro matches. Like what? It's insane. Clash Royale can get my heart pumping harder than any other game I've ever played because there's so much to manage at any given moment, and that player versus player interaction is just so engaging. Brawl Stars requires on-point twitch reflexes and a deep understanding of how every single character in the game actually works. Supercell games are sweaty and deep. Supercell gamers are hardcore and smart. Who is Squad Busters' target audience if it isn't the sweaty hardcore players that are already playing their other games? If the combat in Squad Busters is as linear as stop moving to attack, then the players who care most about Supercell games and who care most about all the characters from Supercell games coming to each other are going to lose interest very quickly. I'm not saying that Squad Busters has to be as hardcore as Supercell's other games. After all, Squad Busters kind of reminds me a little bit of like Mario Party, right? It's chill, it's fun, you play it, it's like, you know, the most skilled people are probably going to win most of the time, but sometimes they're not. And honestly, I think that a game can be fun even for hardcore players without it being super complex. But at its core, the combat absolutely needs more depth if it's going to maintain interest of the Supercell player base, which is exactly what this game is trying to, they're trying to tug on the heartstrings of Supercell gamers, right? Then in that case, they should add enough skill depth, not just from PvP interactions, but also from gameplay or squad building in order to tug at those heartstrings of those hardcore Supercell gamers. It just makes sense. So I do have a suggestion here that I feel like could really help. Obviously, I haven't tried this, but you know, I think this will work. You should absolutely have an attack button. The game can work out exactly how it works right now. If you stop moving, then they'll just start attacking things. But the attack button should allow your squad to attack anything close to them if it is held down, even while you are moving away from enemies or strafing to the side of enemy projectiles. I think that it is fair that if you are holding that attack button down, that your squad's movement speed would slow down, even if they are attacking while they are moving. But this is one simple button that just says, hey, we are attacking even while we're trying to run away. We're gonna slow down to try and attack, but hopefully we can get a little bit of chip damage in there that'll actually be useful. This would allow players to poke at each other while also keeping their distance as they try and dodge enemy projectiles. And it's a very simple mechanic that honestly adds a lot of depth to PvP interactions. Obviously, short range and long range squad members would actually interact a little bit differently depending on how the ranges all work like that. but you get the idea. And they wouldn't even have to remove things how they are right now. They could make it so that if you just stop attacking, then your squad automatically attacks. So they would be super chill, especially when you're doing PvE type of stuff or taking out bosses or farming or whatever. It's not a complex mechanic. Even the most inexperienced gamers would be able to understand a simple hold down to attack button. But I don't think that Squad Busters should end right there. I really think they should add buttons for each super ability for each of your squad members. For example, if Shelly charges up her super, then her super button would light up and it would only activate if you actually tap on that super button. There's no aiming or anything like that. It would just allow you to choose when to activate the ability. And if you had multiple Shellys, then pressing the button would activate the supers of all of the Shellys if they all had their supers charged up. You could also plan it just how it works right now in the game, where you have 3 different Shellys and they're all charged up to different levels, so that if you do take out an enemy squad member, then you could also activate the next super and then the next super and the next super as the characters actually charge up their super. So it doesn't actually be any different, it just adds a little bit more choice and would add a lot of strategic depth to how you actually interacted with enemy players. It might even allow you to outplay enemies that actually have bigger squads than you do. Now, this does potentially have an issue. If you had a squad of 6 or more squad members, each with a different super, this would require 6 different super buttons, and that's a lot. In fact, Supercell really likes to have clean UIs, and the clutter would be a big downside of doing something like that. But honestly, I don't think that's a big concern in my opinion. Not all of the heroes even have super abilities, right? There's a lot of there's tons of them that actually don't. And the nice thing is that duplicate heroes in your squad would all use the same button. So at most matches, the most super buttons you'd probably need is 3 or 4, which is very reasonable. I mean, I've played MOBAs on mobile that have like 6 buttons all on the screen, or maybe even more than that. And in fact, I know I've played a lot of games that have way more than 6 buttons on there. The thing is that I know that the team that is working on Squad Busters is very creative and they could come up with a nice UI that is clean and a good solution to this. I just feel like it would make a huge difference in the game. I really like my solution, and honestly, I'm not like, they might come up with a better solution. Ultimately, the developers need to make PvP more skill-based because right now it's very stale. Okay, first 2 issues. Skill when it comes to deck building and skill when it comes to player versus player interactions. Now let's talk about the 3rd issue, which is that I think the game needs a lot more variety. Now when I say variety, there's actually a couple of types of mentalities when it comes to ways that game developers will make games feel like they have a lot of variety. Obviously there's the Clash Royale mentality, where their goal is to make one singular game mode that has a ton of depth and is worth playing over and over again. In this type of game mode, the goal is to add more characters that keep changing the meta and to make the game feel like it has variety because every single matchup is completely different. However, it is important to make sure that every character or card is viable in some way in these types of games, which is really hard to do, okay? That's the Clash Royale mentality, but then you have the Brawl Stars mentality, where there are multiple game modes and each one has different ways to win. The game modes aren't particularly complex, but the fact that the characters are complex and that there are multiple game modes really helps keep the game feel more fresh and exciting. And most importantly, in my opinion, it allows for different characters to be good or bad in different various modes, right? Currently, Clash Squad only has 1 game mode. Now, with that being said, there was a duo game mode that wasn't available for us to play during the beta. I can only imagine that the duo game mode is very similar to the main game mode, but you play with a partner. And honestly, I really like that idea. But I think that the game would really benefit from a lot more game modes. With all that said, there's actually a reason why I shared this 3rd core issue last, okay? If the team puts more choice in squad building and they add more depth to the combat, this issue actually might fix itself, since the single game mode that they have in the game right now will have a lot more depth and be a lot more fun to play over and over and over again because of the added skill with deck building and the added skill with player versus player interactions. So they definitely need to focus on those 2 things first before they actually consider game modes, in my opinion. But I do really feel like the game will be much better if we have a lot of different game modes that allow different characters to really thrive. For example, I would love a Gold Rush game mode where the Goblin would actually do really, really well. I'd also like a PvE game mode where the Heyday crew could really thrive in building farms and stuff like that. I'd also like a game mode that is a lot more focused on just PvP, where everybody wants to go with high DPS characters. There are so many awesome things that they could do with multiple game modes And I would just love to see what the team could come up with, though, because Squad Busters has a lot of potential. I love the idea of all these characters coming together and competing against each other in various different game modes. It seems like so much fun. There could be Clash Royale type challenges. There could be Clash of Clans type challenges. There could be Brawl Stars type challenges, even Heyday ones. You guys get the idea. Either way, though, I do think that the team should focus on squad building and skill-based PvP first, but definitely have multiple game modes on their list of things that they would like to do eventually. And those are really the three main core issues that I think really need to be addressed before the game is ready for a larger audience. But I do have some quick rapid-fire feedback on the game. I actually really like that the game already has a training area that you can test out different characters. I do wish that the main boss there actually respawned, or that we could choose what types of bosses to spawn. But honestly, the polished training area, it's actually pretty good so far. More importantly, I actually really enjoyed the progression system of the game. I have played so many games that are so good and the gameplay is amazing and the whole experience is ruined by the progression system. So many times that has happened, and honestly, this is really impressive what they've actually done with the progression system right now. It was really fast on day one. There was tons of progress you could play. It was awesome. Day one was fantastic. Now, it was a little bit slow to unlock all the heroes. In fact, I couldn't even unlock all of them in 10 days, but I think that's actually fine, since eventually we'd have more time than just 10 days to play, right? And also, I don't think that they planned for a ton of progression, but their early progression, really fantastic. Now, with that said, though, I was not a fan of the fact that the heroes would show up in chests that you didn't even have unlocked. So like, if I didn't have the Barbarian King unlocked, there was a chance that I would go up to a chest and the Barbarian King would be sitting there and you couldn't pick it. So instead of having 3 options that are honestly like, I want more options, instead of 3, I was down to 2. Like, it's not cool. I feel like they did it to try and get players excited about future heroes, but guess what? I've played Supercell games before. I'm already hyped for future heroes. Don't waste my 1/3 of my already limited choice with the hero that I can't even use mid-match, right? Anyway, also, I found it annoying that Greg, whose only purpose is to chop trees, was slowed down by the bushes that surround every single tree in the game. He should not be slowed down, right? That's an easy fix, but you get the idea. I wish that there was an easier way for you to be able to find chests once you got a key or enough gold. That's another easy fix that they could do as well. I also wish that they had a play again option, so you didn't have to wait to head right back into a match. I did really like the quest system for progression, and the unlock system actually felt pretty fine to me. Overall, they did a really good job with the game. And overall, I am just so excited for this game. I really hope that the game developer team actually does take the community feedback seriously, because this game, guys, it could just be amazing. It's not quite there yet, but I've got hope for it. And I want to know what you guys think about the game. And also, if you're commenting and you're sharing feedback, I would really like you to add one clarifier, and that is whether you have played it or not. Both feedback is actually very valid, and I think that's very important. But whether you're a viewer or you've played it, what did you think of the game? So let me know in the comment section below. And make sure you guys have subscribed for potentially more Squad Busters content to come out when I'm able to. I don't know. This is going to be the last that I talk about it until we can play it again, most likely. And also, until then, you can check out my current content right there. For now, this is KairosTime ticking by, and hopefully we will see you in Squad Busters.